fell off the high dive onto the concrete when I was 10. My legs crumpled and my head banged into the ground super hard. I remember getting up again and feeling numb, then I heard the lifeguard's horn and fell back over. I thought I was finished at that point, but woke up 15 minutes later on a board with my head in a brace. Funny thing is my dad refused to let them take me in an ambulance. He said he'd rather just take me to the pediatrician the next morning. My early 20s, I believe. Surfing very large hurricane swell that was closing out hard in Pascuals, Mexico. I had cabin fever from sitting on the beach in non-stop rain for days. Paddled out with a short board, 6 feet 1 inch lost, and spent 30 minutes looking for a way to grow wings and fly back to shore. I'd paddle in a bit and sit at the peak, and watch the thick black curtain slam down wave after wave. It was very surreal and intense. Imagine Land of the Lost as the backdrop, thick jungle, a raging brown river mouth off to the left, with black sand beaches and bamboo palapas dotting them. A retreating hurricane behind you in the Pacific. I eventually felt confident in my count of the sets and timing. And dropped in. I nearly drowned that day. One of the biggest, fastest and most badass rides I've ever had. The villagers and surfers all lined up on the beach to watch me die. I'm glad I was in great shape and had been surfing since I was a kid at a sponsored level. I'd never do it again. Youth. Boyfriend, me, and a friend were driving around for the hell of it. Got to an empty part of a neighboring city, and just as we drove forward, a semi came flying down the road. There was no way we could outrace it, and I remember feeling oddly calm, despite the fact that we were seconds away from the end. Luckily for us, the truck driver slammed on his brakes instead of slamming into us, but goddamn, he cut it close. We were all pretty shaken up, especially once we realized we all had the same thought. It's not every day that you can look your loved ones in the eyes and go, hey, I think we almost fucking died. I don't remember much else about that day after that, but knowing us, we probably got fast food to celebrate the fact that we were still breathing LMAO. Literally like in the movies, I was unloading produce in a walk-in freezer, and the door slammed shut behind me and wouldn't open. The emergency release hatch was hidden behind boxes, and I only found it because I had that fight or flight adrenaline and started throwing boxes wildly till I found it. When a week before the lockdown started in my city, and the day before my birthday, on Thursday, March 5th, 2020, I out of nowhere started to slowly lose my vision, and I felt very shy to interrupt the teacher for help, since the teacher was talking, and I didn't want to make the teacher upset, so I let them continue talking, and I thought that no one was going to see or notice what was happening to me, and then I thought, so this is how I am going to die, with me losing my vision, and then falling on my back or head to the ground, and be dead, without anyone noticing anything. Luckily, before I completely fainted, I do remember my teacher did notice me being off, with me holding on to my head from feeling extremely hot, and that I wasn't doing anything from feeling very unwell, and my teacher asked me, is everything alright? In which I responded, I think I am losing my vision, and I think I am going to die at this moment. Then, I remember that I fainted, and happened to feel movements going on around me, and I wasn't sure what was happening, though. I do remember waking up to find myself slowly regaining my vision back, and sort of seeing a nurse come in and my teachers asking me if I felt alright. And after that, I thanked my teachers and the nurse for saving my life, and the nurse took me to the nurse's room, with me being in a wheelchair at the end, and thankfully, I was still able to walk and have my vision, smiley face. Had a full-body anaphylactic reaction to something where hundreds of itchy burning sores opened all over my body over the course of a week. When they start forming in the mouth and anus, there's a very low chance of survival. I was sitting in the shower and hit that cusp. Still here though. MRI revealed I had a mass on the left temporal lobe of my brain. I had to wait a few months to get another MRI to see if the mass grew and was cancerous. It wasn't. But I was sure I had brain cancer for the longest time. Do use Dr. Google. It's a rabbit hole. Went on a hike with some family and friends, and we came to this spot by a cliff. I went to look over the edge, and I leant on a tree to hold me. The tree broke and I fell over the edge. Luckily my dad caught me by my ankle and pulled me up. I survived a mass shooting. 2007. I tried to swim in the ocean without knowing how to swim, and I started drowning. I was 16 and riding a big horse who freaked out and started bolting and bucking. I instinctively turned her one way to try to get her to slow down, but she ran right through my hands and I lost my balance. Ended up kind of watching myself fall in a dragged-out version of time, going headfirst towards rocky hard ground at 25 miles per hour. I was fully lucid up until the point my head smacked the ground, where I got rolled under her legs and felt her hoof land on my left hip. I remember regaining consciousness and not being able to see the people coming over to help me because everything was sort of black. There was blood running down my neck because at some point the horse had stepped on my hair, so blessed that it wasn't right on my head, and pulled out a chunk of it. When I was lying on the ground, drifting in and out of consciousness, and trying to get my eyes to focus enough to make out the people around me, was where I thought about how I didn't want to die yet. I somehow ended up not even breaking a bone, but I still don't have any feeling in my hip due to nerve damage. First migraine and NSAIDs didn't work. Go to bed early. Wake up with migraine hangover. Sit up and itch my nose, find out I have a nosebleed. Well, guess I'll die. It's not as bad as the ones I've read, but one time for my cousin's birthday, my uncle brought us tubing, and on our last run he was doing a really fast donut, and me and my cousin hit a wave and went like 5 feet into the air, but we held on, which was a bad choice. As we fell we knocked into each other, and my arm hit my head. After that we hit a wave, and didn't get air, but we both let go. When I was in the water I went lightheaded, and just blacked out for a few seconds, but came back when they were about to go past to get us back on the tube. I thought I was going to die floating in my life jacket in the middle of a lake. Also, let me just add, at the time I was 11, and my cousin just turned 10, so being an 11-year-old I thought I was going to die. My friend and I went tide pooling at low tide looking for tiger cowrie shells around the coral reefs. It was at a remote South Pacific island village. We walked about half a mile out when the water was around our knees. We lost track of time looking for the shells when the tide started to come in really fast. The water was up to our tummies and rising before we knew it. I hear a huge splash right behind me, and I turn around to see a black shark fin, and a quick peek of a tail few feet from me. My friend heard the splash as well, and we start gunning it for the shore. In the rush of things I cut my toe on a piece of coral, and I saw the blood swirling in the water. At that moment I thought, this is how I'm going to die, by being eaten alive by a shark. We found a huge brain-looking coral, and stood on top of it hugging each other, praying, and saying our goodbyes, LOL. The water was continuing to rise, so we took our chances, and started doggy paddling / running to shore, hoping the shark had left for deeper waters. We made it to shore in one piece, we're alive and well. After story, my toe cut got super infected, there was a piece of coral stuck in there. The toe swelled to about 5 times its size, and looked super crusty and gross. But well worth the story and making it alive. Was driving on the highway, trying to make it to class on time to take a final. Was going the speed limit, 65, when I got cut off by a semi. I slammed on my brakes in order to avoid crashing. Nobody was behind me, but they suddenly gave out. Now I'm still going about 50 miles per hour, with no apparent way to stop. I start pumping my brakes to try and slow down as much as I can, turned on my hazard lights, and pulled on the emergency brake as soon as I made it to the shoulder. Nothing. Emergency brake didn't work either. I thought to myself, well, fuck, as I'm still rapidly pumping my brakes, now going about 40 miles per hour. The shoulder ends in a quarter mile. WTF do I do now? I screamed to myself. Got back into the far right lane, as I had no other choice. Took the very next exit I could, and luckily it went uphill for a while. My car slowed down to 25 miles per hour, still pumping the brakes. It wasn't until I barely made it through an intersection that I caught the attention of the police. When I was finally able to come to a stop, I sat there dumbfounded at what I had just went through. Relieved I was able to avoid an accident, but now concerned about the officer approaching my window. I told him what happened. He asked me to step out of the car. He got my info, checked my brakes, I insisted, noted my hazards were on, and radioed his superior. As he's explaining what I told him, I felt numb. I came so close to crashing at 65/50/40/25 mph multiple times, and for sure thought this is how I'm going out. At every near miss. Ended up getting a ticket for running a red light, and missed my final. Had to retake the class the following semester. Worst day of my life. TLDR, brakes gave out on highway going 65, had several near misses, caught the attention of the police, got a ticket, and missed my final. I was climbing a snow couloir on Mt. Neva in Colorado, when near the top the snow got very thin, and gave out under my feet. I fell 400 meters, 1,300 feet, down the snow. About midway down there was a rock band that curls under the bottom of the couloir. After trying to self-arrest with my ice axe and failing, my mind went to the rocks below me. I was sliding at high speed, and I had no idea what part of my body would hit the rocks. I thought for sure my life would flash before my eyes or I'd think of my loved ones. But I didn't, all I could think about was, oh fuck. I got lucky, my femur shattered on the rock, I flew about 40 feet in the air before slamming back into the snow. Realizing I was alive was such a relief. Writing this is rather cathartic. Thanks for reading. I was traveling with my friend to Sri Lanka from the UK for about 21 hours, we arrived there, and was obviously knackered, and a bit delirious. We got in a taxi and gave our hostel address to the driver to get us there. It was also about 1 in the morning when we got in the taxi, and halfway through whilst driving through an unlit area he stopped the car, and stuck his hand out of the window to take off the taxi sticker on the door, and the sign off the roof. I felt my friend's hand clasp around mine, and we both realized that that was it, we were about to die. Luckily he told the hostel worker, who spoke Sinhala and English, that he did it because he was finished for the night, and didn't want to do any more trips when we got there. Overall, was a pleasant 10-minute drive to what we thought was our death. Getting into a car wreck with a group of friends. I seriously thought we were going to die, and almost thought we were going to lose a friend. She was okay. Just knocked out. I was a gymnast when I was a kid and fell off the high bar headfirst while doing giants, where you swing around the bar 360 degrees. I felt a little bit of regret, but also figured there wasn't anything I could do about it, and accepted my impending death. 2 broken arms later, I was still alive. Almost a year ago I had to go to the hospital due to numbness on the left side of my body, that was followed up first by a sickly kind of headache the day before during school. It was about a week after my 15th birthday, and doctors were thinking that I could have been possibly a stroke, but weren't as concerned since I did not present with other common symptoms of a stroke, and because of my age. I had a CT and MRI of my brain done, and everything came out clear. But with each test they were doing to me I was dreading what they were going to diagnose me with, and was mentally preparing for my possible demise. My mom even looked kind of depressed in my hospital room, and I'm sure that she was worried about me. I was also still very anxious about that little EE virus outbreak, so that did not help whatsoever. But it turns out that the episode was most likely a migraine triggered by imbalanced hormones, and I still get that type to this day. However, after going to the hospital for what I thought were my final hours, has not done so well for my health mentally, and I developed severe hypochondria/health anxiety after the incident. It's not as bad as it was months ago, but I still worry about dying in my sleep, or contracting some rare fatal disease almost all the time. Sad face. My family took a trip to the beach when I was 15. I was out a little farther than the rest of my family, and was looking for a good wave to swim back to them. I had only been out there for a minute or so when the biggest wave I've ever seen picked up. This wasn't tsunami size, but it was easily 10+ feet tall, and cresting directly over me. Me, being the stupidest teenager on the planet, decided this would be the one to ride back, so I went for it. Immediately my feet went above my head, and I lost all sense of direction. I was under for maybe 10 seconds, and during that time I accepted that I was either going to wash out into the ocean and drown, or break my neck with how much I was tumbling around. Once I resurfaced and got back to shore, I decided to call it quits for a few days, and headed back to take a shower. What freaked me out the most wasn't that I almost died, but that other than the instinctual freakout I was perfectly fine with dying right then and there.